I'm Bethany Coleman, and I'll never forget the day my family left me alone in Genoa, Italy is a mean joke. We were on a family vacation, and I thought it would help us get along better. Instead, they left me at a busy marketplace. My wallet was empty, I had no passport, and no way to get home. My sister's voice came through the payphone. "You're annoying everyone, Bethany," she said. My mom added, "This is your fault." I could hear them laughing as they hung up, leaving me alone in a country far from home. I stood there, my heart beating fast, holding the useless phone, realizing they had planned this on purpose. My own family was making fun of me like I didn't matter. I wasn't just lost. I was hurt by people I trusted. After a long time, when they saw me again, I was standing next to someone they never expected. Let's just say my dad's mouth dropped open, and he shouted something that changed everything. Stay tuned to find out who it was. If your family has ever hurt you, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. Tell me, what would you do if your family did something like this? I read every single one. Growing up in New York, I was always different from the rest of my family. My sister Lindsay, who is 5 years older than me, was the favorite child. She was polished, perfect, and already working her way up at a big bank by the time she was 27. My parents couldn't stop talking about how great she was. "Why can't you be more like Lindsay?" My mom, Cheryl, would snap at me in a sharp voice whenever I stayed up late drawing. My dad, Gary, rarely said anything, but his quiet meant he agreed with her. To them, my love for painting was just a silly hobby, not something real. At 22, I was still trying to figure out who I was, but to them, I was a disappointment, a dreamer who didn't fit what they wanted me to be. Our house in Queens felt like a place full of pressure and high expectations. Cheryl ran everything strictly and cared a lot about what the neighbors thought of us. She'd stare at my jeans with paint stains on them and mutter, "You're embarrassing us with those old clothes." One time she grabbed my sketchbook and threw it on the counter like it was garbage. "Stop wasting your life on these silly drawings," she said. Gary would just nod, not looking at me. "Get a real job, Bethany." He'd mumble if he said anything at all. Lindsay was the worst. At family dinners, she'd smirk at my drawings and say, "That's cute, Bethany, but you can't make money doing that." Everyone would laugh like my dreams were a big joke. School wasn't much better. I was studying art at NYU, putting all my feelings into every painting. But I felt like I didn't belong with other students who were trying to get fancy internships at galleries. I worked part-time at a coffee shop to buy paint, barely having enough money. That's where I met Eric, my boyfriend at the time. He was studying business and seemed charming with big plans for a business career. At first, he seemed to understand me. We talked late at night about my art, and he promised to support me. But when I told him I wanted to skip more school and just focus on painting, his face changed. "You're throwing everything away, Bethany," he said in a cold voice. "I need someone with real goals." Just like that, he left, making me doubt every choice I'd made. Eric's betrayal hurt, but my family's reaction hurt even more. When I told Cheryl about the breakup, she just shrugged. "If you'd listened to him, maybe he would have stayed," she said, drinking her coffee like it was no big deal. Lindsay leaned back in her chair, flipping her hair. "You're too much, Bethany. Always chasing impossible dreams." Gary didn't even look up from his newspaper. It was like I only existed, so they could criticize me. Every family gathering reminded me of my failures. They'd talk excitedly about Lindsay's job promotions, her fancy apartment, and her perfect life, then look at me with pity or disgust. "When are you going to grow up?" Cheryl asked once, her voice full of disappointment. I wanted to fight back, but I just sat there, staying quiet. I started skipping family dinners, hiding in the art studio instead. Painting was my safe place, the one place where I felt good. But their voices, Lindsay's mean comments, Cheryl's lectures, Gary's silence, followed me everywhere. I tried to prove them wrong by entering local art contests, but when I didn't win, Cheryl would say, "See, you should have studied something useful." It hurt, but I kept painting, hoping one day they'd see I was worth something. I thought the family trip to Genoa might be a chance to show them I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I was so wrong. The family trip to Genoa. Italy was supposed to be a break from all the stress. I packed my sketchbook, excited to draw the city's old harbor and narrow streets, thinking a new place might make things better between us. But from the moment we got off the plane, Lindsay made it clear she wasn't interested in getting along. "Why do you always have to slow us down?" she snapped on our first morning, glaring at me as I stopped to sketch an old stone arch. Cheryl wasn't any nicer. "Hurry up, Bethany," she barked, walking past me like I was bothering her. Gary walked behind, his face showing nothing, only shrugging when I looked at him for help. The plan was to spend a week exploring Genoa, but it quickly became a show of how much they disliked me. Lindsay led the way, criticizing everything I did. At a cafe near the harbor, I tried ordering in Italian, messing up the words. She burst out laughing loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're making us look stupid," she said, smirking as she drank her coffee. Mom nodded, her eyes narrow. "Just act like you fit in here," she muttered. Dad stayed quiet, stirring his coffee, not looking at me. I forced a smile and suggested we visit a local art gallery, hoping they'd meet me halfway. Lindsay shut it down fast. "Nobody wants to waste time on your art stuff," she said, and Cheryl steered us toward a shopping street instead, waving me away. By day 3, I was exhausted from their constant mean comments. We were at a crowded market in Genoa's old town, surrounded by stands piled with spices and handmade items. I was sketching a vendor's display when Lindsay pulled me aside. "The bus to our next stop leaves at noon," she said in a sharp voice. "Don't mess this up." I checked my watch, 11:30, and rushed to get my things. But when I got to the bus stop, no one was there. My stomach dropped. I looked around the street hoping they were nearby, but my phone rang instead. It was Lindsay. "We're already on the bus," she said in a proud voice. "You were too slow." I heard Cheryl in the background laughing. "You'll figure it out," she added. Gary's chuckle came through faintly. "Just a little prank," Lindsay said before hanging up. I stood there, my hands shaking, holding the phone. The market's noise faded as my heart pounded in my ears. I reached for my wallet. Nothing. Not a single euro. My passport was in Cheryl's bag, gone with them. They'd planned this, left me stranded in a foreign country, and laughed about it. I called Lindsay back, my voice shaking. "Why would you do this?" I asked. She didn't even pretend to care. "Maybe now you'll stop dragging us down," she said, her words sharp like knives. The call ended, their laughter ringing in my head. I was alone, abandoned, and embarrassed. I walked around the market, my mind spinning. Part of me wanted to run after them, to beg them to come back. I could almost hear Lindsay's proud voice, Cheryl's dismissive tone, and Gary's silence. But something else took over, a spark of anger, of standing up for myself. I'd spent too long trying to win their approval only to be made fun of. Standing in that busy market, I realized I didn't have to play their game anymore. That realization would shape everything that came next. I chose to stay in Genoa. It wasn't just about refusing to crawl back to my family. It was about proving I could build something on my own. With nothing but my sketchbook and a stubborn attitude, I set out to create a life in this unfamiliar city, betting everything on my art. Finding a place to live came first. I had no money, no passport, just a backpack with clothes and pencils. Walking the narrow streets, I found a rundown hostel near Genoa's harbor. The owner, an older woman named Maria, noticed my worn jacket and tired eyes. "You need help?" she asked, her voice rough but kind. I didn't tell her about Lindsay, Cheryl, or Gary, just that I was stranded and could draw. I offered to sketch her portrait for a night's stay. She nodded, and I spent hours drawing her wrinkled face, each stroke a small act of standing up for myself. That drawing earned me a squeaky bed for the night. Surviving meant finding money fast. Maria let me stay longer if I cleaned rooms, scrubbing sinks and sweeping floors for a few euros. It was hard work, but it gave me a roof over my head while I figured things out. During breaks, I sketched on the streets, drawing Genoa's colorful docks and busy squares. Tourists would stop, some dropping coins into my pencil case. Those coins bought bread and cheap coffee, enough to keep me going. I ignored the buzzing of my phone, Lindsay and Cheryl calling, probably expecting me to beg for a ticket home. I didn't pick up. They'd left me with nothing. I'd show them I needed nothing from them. Breaking into Genoa's art scene was tough. The city was full of talented artists, and I was unknown with no connections. I spent days asking cafes and small galleries if they wanted murals or sketches for sale. Most doors closed on me, but one cafe owner, Luca, Took a chance. He wanted a mural of the coast on his shop's wall. "Do it fast," he said, looking at me doubtfully. I painted through the night, my hands cramped from holding brushes, mixing blues and golds until the wall came alive with crashing waves. By morning, Luca handed me 50 euros, his rough face softening. "You have skill, kid," he said. That money felt like a lifeline. I moved into a cheaper place, a tiny room in a shared apartment with 2 women who spoke little English. The walls were peeling and the sink dripped, but it was mine. I stretched every euro, living on pasta and market fruit, and kept drawing. The hostel work ended, so I focused harder on my sketches, selling quick portraits to tourists in the plaza. Each sale, even just a few euros, was a win, a building block in the life I was creating. At night, doubts crept in. I'd lie on my thin mattress, staring at my sketchbook, hearing Cheryl's voice. "You're wasting your life." Lindsay's sneer. "You're not a real artist." Gary's silence, heavier than words. I pushed them away, forcing myself to paint each morning. Over weeks, I found a routine. I painted murals for small shops, sold sketches on weekends, and traded drawings for meals when cash was tight. Genoa streets, once scary, started to feel like home. I learned to bargain with vendors, to find my way through the city's maze, to live on my own terms. I wasn't just getting by. I was creating something real, something mine. Life in Genoa was starting to take shape. One afternoon, while sketching in a sunny plaza, I met Tyler Reed. He was a street artist, his hands stained with chalk, setting up a colorful mural on the cobblestones. I watched him work, blending bright reds and blues into a scene of crashing waves. "Nice lines," he said, glancing at my sketchbook without stopping his work. I mumbled a thanks, surprised by his American accent. He was from Chicago, he told me, and had been in Genoa for 2 years, living off his art. Something about his easy confidence made me want to keep talking. Tyler was different from anyone I'd met. He didn't just draw, he poured his whole self into it, unashamed and free. When I showed him my sketches, he didn't sugarcoat his thoughts. "You've got talent," he said, pointing at a drawing of the harbor. "But you're holding back. Push harder." His honesty stung, but it wasn't cruel like Lindsay's jabs or Cheryl's put-downs. It was honest, meant to help. He suggested I join him at a local street fair where artists sold their work to tourists. "You could make real money," he said, tossing me a spare piece of chalk. I hesitated, but his grin was contagious and I agreed. The fair was a whirlwind of color and noise. Tyler introduced me to other artists, a close-knit group who shared supplies and tips. He helped me set up a small booth displaying my sketches of Genoa's old town. When a tourist offered 10 euros for a portrait, Tyler nudged me. "Charge more," he whispered. "Your work's worth it." By the end of the day, I'd sold 5 sketches, making enough to cover a week's groceries. It wasn't a fortune, but it felt like one. Tyler high-fived me, laughing. "Told you," he said, his eyes bright with encouragement. Over the next few weeks, Tyler became a friend. He showed me the best spots to draw, hidden alleys with crumbling arches, docks where the light hit just right. He connected me with a bar owner who needed a mural for his patio. "Bethany's your girl," Tyler told him, clapping me on the shoulder. I landed the job, painting a sprawling vine design that took 3 days and earned me 100 euros. Tyler didn't just open doors. He pushed me to trust my skills. "You don't need anyone's permission to be great," he said one night over cheap wine. His words stuck, drowning out Mom's lectures and Lindsay's sneers. Living in Genoa was still a challenge. I struggled with the language, fumbling through conversations with locals. My tiny apartment with its creaky floors and thin walls felt far from home. But Tyler's presence made it easier. We'd spend evenings sketching together, swapping stories about our lives. He'd left Chicago after a falling out with his own family, chasing art instead of their expectations. "You're not alone in this," he told me, his voice steady. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a failure, but as someone with potential. I started to find my footing. The bar mural led to another job, painting a storefront with a scene of Genoa's lighthouse. I learned to bargain with vendors for supplies, to find my way through the city's winding streets without a map. My sketches sold faster at the market, and I even started trying out bolder colors, inspired by Tyler's fearless style. Genoa wasn't just a place to survive anymore. It was where I was becoming myself. Tyler's friendship was a turning point. He didn't just help me find work. He showed me I could build a life that was mine. And that life was about to take an unexpected leap forward. My art was finally finding its place in Genoa. One crisp autumn evening, I got a chance to show my work at a local art festival in a historic palace. Tyler had pushed me to submit my sketches, insisting they deserved a spotlight. I was nervous setting up my small display of charcoal drawings, scenes of Genoa's winding alleys and weathered fishermen. The crowd buzzed with locals and tourists, their voices echoing off the marble floors. I stood by my booth, heart racing as people stopped to look. A woman in a sharp blazer stopped, studying my work. "These are striking," she said, introducing herself as Elena, a curator from a well-known Genoa gallery. She handed me her card, saying we should talk. That conversation changed everything. Elena invited me to her gallery, a sleek space in the city center with high ceilings and white walls. She wanted to feature my work in an upcoming group show. "Your perspective is fresh," she told me, pointing to a sketch of the harbor at dusk. I could barely speak, nodding as she explained the details. The show would include established artists, and my pieces, 5 large-scale drawings, would hang alongside theirs. It was my first real break, a chance to be seen as more than a street artist. I walked out of the gallery dizzy with possibility, holding Elena's contract like it was gold. Tyler stepped up as more than a friend. He became my partner in handling this new world. He'd been through gallery shows before and knew what to do. "You need a system," he said, helping me organize my portfolio and price my work. He spent hours with me in a rented studio, framing drawings and planning the display. When I doubted myself, he was firm. "You're not just good, Bethany. You're unforgettable," he said, his voice strong. His belief kept me steady, especially when the pressure of the show felt overwhelming. We worked late nights, drinking espresso, tweaking details until everything was perfect. The gallery opening was a blur of faces and clinking glasses. My drawings drew a crowd, their stark lines and bold shadows catching eyes. People whispered, pointing at my name on the wall. Elena introduced me to collectors, and by the end of the night, 3 of my pieces had sold for more than I'd earned in months. A critic from a local art magazine approached, asking for an interview. "You're one to watch," he said, writing notes. I felt like I was floating, like Genoa had finally claimed me as its own. Tyler and I celebrated the show's success at a small restaurant, splitting a bottle of wine. He raised his glass, grinning. "To you taking over the art world," he said. I laughed, but his words sank in. The gallery wanted more of my work, and Elena hinted at a solo show if sales kept up. Tyler offered to handle logistics, scheduling, contracts, supplies, so I could focus on creating. "We're a team now," he said, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. I was no longer the girl scrambling to survive. I was an artist with a future. Genoa's art scene embraced me, but the path ahead held bigger challenges. 5 years had created a new path for me. Back in New York for my first major solo exhibition, I stood in a sleek Manhattan gallery surrounded by my paintings, bold canvases of Genoa's rugged coastlines and vibrant streets. The room hummed with critics, collectors, and curious locals, their whispers blending with the clink of wine glasses. I'd worked tirelessly for this moment, pouring my soul into each piece. Tyler, now a celebrated artist himself, stood by my side, helping manage the crowd and answering questions from curators. His presence was a quiet anchor, his sharp grin cutting through my nerves. The exhibition was a triumph. My paintings sold faster than I could track, with collectors offering thousands for pieces I'd once sketched on Genoa's cobblestones. A reviewer from an art magazine called my work raw and commanding, snapping photos for a feature. I was no longer the girl who'd been left behind. I was Bethany Coleman, an artist making waves. Tyler leaned in, whispering, "You're killing it." I smiled, feeling the weight of years of struggle lift just a little. Then I saw them, Lindsay, Cheryl, and Gary weaving through the crowd. My stomach twisted. I hadn't spoken to them since Genoa, ignoring their calls and messages. Lindsay's face was all fake warmth, her smile tight as she approached. "Bethany, we're so proud," she said, her voice dripping with fakeness. Cheryl stepped forward, clutching her purse. "We made a mistake," she said, her eyes darting around the gallery. "We want you back in our lives." Gary nodded, his expression stiff. "Let's put the past behind us," he added, his tone flat. Their words felt rehearsed, their eyes lingering on the sold signs next to my paintings. I wasn't fooled. They hadn't come to apologize. They'd come for a piece of my success. Lindsay's gaze flicked to the price tags, her lips twitching. Cheryl kept mentioning family connections in New York, hinting at introductions to wealthy friends. Gary's eyes narrowed when he spotted Tyler, who was charming a group of collectors nearby. "Isn't that Tyler Reed?" Gary muttered, his voice sharp. Then he froze, recognition hitting him. "You're working with him!" he shouted loud enough to turn heads. The room quieted, eyes on us. Tyler turned, his calm demeanor unshaken. "Problem, sir?" he asked, stepping closer. Gary's face reddened. He'd clearly heard of Tyler. His murals were now famous, featured in galleries from London to Tokyo. "You're that street artist?" Gary spat, pointing a finger. "You think you're better than us?" Lindsay grabbed his arm, hissing. "Gary, stop." But he shook her off, his voice rising. "You left us for this guy, Bethany, after everything we did?" I stared, stunned by his nerve. Everything they did? They'd abandoned me in a foreign country, laughed as I struggled. Tyler placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice low. "You don't owe them anything," he said, steady as ever. I faced my family, my voice calm but firm. "You don't get to walk in here and claim credit for my life," I said. "You left me with nothing. I built this without you." Lindsay's smile faded, her eyes cold. Cheryl's face tightened, but she stayed silent. Gary sputtered, but the crowd's attention made him shrink back. "You'll regret this," he muttered, turning away. Lindsay and Cheryl followed, their heels clicking as they left the gallery. The air felt lighter with them gone. Tyler squeezed my shoulder, nodding toward the crowd. "Focus on what matters," he said. I took a deep breath, turning back to the collectors, answering their questions with renewed confidence. The night ended with nearly all my paintings sold, and a curator approached about a European tour. I'd come back to New York, not to reclaim my past, but to prove I'd outgrown it. That night set the stage for what was coming next. My story had come full circle. After the New York exhibition, I returned to my studio, a sunlit loft overlooking the Hudson River. Tyler and I sat down to process what had happened. The confrontation with Lindsay, Cheryl, and Gary lingered, but we agreed they didn't deserve a place in our lives. Their fake apologies at the gallery were just another attempt to leech off my success. Tyler, now a force in the art world, was blunt. "They're not your family," he said, his voice steady. "Family doesn't tear you down." I nodded, feeling a weight lift. I didn't need their forgiveness or approval. I'd built my own world without them. Lindsay's reputation took a hit soon after. Word spread in New York's tight-knit art circles about her behavior. Her sharp tongue and manipulative tactics were no secret. A few gallery owners who'd overheard her mean remarks at my show started whispering. Socialites she'd once charmed turned cold when stories of her abandoning me in Genoa surfaced. Her carefully built image as a perfect daughter and socialite began to crack. She called me once, her voice bitter. "You're ruining my life," she hissed, blaming me for her downfall. I hung up unfazed. Her toxic behavior had caught up with her, and I wasn't responsible for the consequences. Cheryl and Gary faced their own reckoning. Their social circle, once propped up by Lindsay's connections, shrank as people distanced themselves. Mom tried reaching out through emails, her words laced with guilt. "We can still be a family," she wrote, but it felt hollow. Gary sent a single text. "You owe us an apology." I laughed at the irony. They'd left me to fend for myself in a foreign country, yet expected me to grovel. I blocked their numbers, cutting the last ties. Their isolation was their own doing, not mine. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but now I saw it for what it was, a trap that kept me small. The lesson hit me hard, and it's one I carry every day. Self-reliance and believing in your own worth are worth more than the approval of a family that only brings you down. I learned it the hard way, starting with nothing in Genoa, scraping by on sketches and stubbornness. Tyler's support showed me what real connection looks like. Not conditional, not manipulative, but rooted in mutual respect. My art, once a lifeline, became my voice, telling stories of strength and defiance. I wasn't just an artist now. I was someone who'd chosen herself over a toxic past. Standing in my studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases, I felt free. My work was gaining traction. Galleries in Paris and Berlin were calling, and a solo show was planned for next spring. Tyler and I were planning a joint exhibition, blending our styles to tell a story of grit and triumph. I'd built a life that was mine, not dictated by Lindsay's sneers or Cheryl's lectures. Gary's outbursts couldn't touch me anymore. I'd outgrown their shadows, and the world was noticing. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic family to find your own path? What did it teach you about yourself? Share your thoughts, your stories,